Every day, we get things off the ground, keeping you connected and secure. We keep things running smoothly and know the importance of giving back. We're always looking at the bigger picture. We are ARA, reliable solutions for facilities and infrastructure.
Welcome to Everyday Greatness, and thanks for watching. I'm your host, Barnaby Howarth. This is a show designed to help people realise there is greatness in being in everyday Harry Sacker roles. Today, I'm going to be talking about the rise of women's sport around the world. I'll be speaking to Order of Australia medalist and AFL Commissioner, Gabrielle Trainor, and the CEO of the Greater Western Sydney Giants, David Matthews. Before the revolution of women playing professional sports that's sweeping the world right now, women being professional athletes was like sitting in the driver's seat of your parents' car when you're 15, but not being able to drive. You knew you could physically do it. You just didn't have the licenses and infrastructure around you that meant that you could. But thanks to the hard work and belief of a lot of people, like my two guests today, that's all changed. Women are now behind the wheel and they're driving fast. Participation rates of women playing previously male-dominated sports like rugby, soccer, cricket and AFL are going through the roof. In a world where there are female prime ministers, CEOs and board members, women's sport is now big business and companies are rushing to the table to support women's sport. The rise of women's professional sport hasn't been just an overnight piece of voodoo magic. It's come about thanks to the hard work and belief of a lot of people, like my two guests today, Gabrielle Trainor and David Matthews. I'm sure the CEO of the Greater Western Sydney Giants, David Matthews, played a solid role in setting up the Greater Western Sydney Giants Football Club. But when you step inside the club, you can't help but feel there's been a significant woman's touch. Stepping inside the club feels like a young boy's bedroom, just a week after a new family has moved into a house. The boy and his father have set it up as well as they possibly can. But after the mother comes in and gives it her once-over, it feels like family. It feels warm and friendly and cosy. My first guest today, Gabrielle Trainor, is that mother. Gabrielle is the perfect example of a woman breaking through the glass ceiling. A former journalist and lawyer, Gabrielle won an Order of Australia medal for service to the community and sport. But Gabrielle's resume when it comes to Australian rules football is equally as impressive. She was an inaugural board member at the Giants, was on the team GWS Advisory Committee, and the best and fairest player for the GWS Giants AFL women's team wins the Gabrielle Trainor Medal. But Gabrielle's football credentials run a lot closer to her heart. Both her father and grandfather were presidents of the North Melbourne Kangaroos Australian Football Club. She's regularly spotted on the South Coast, where her niece Isabella plays for the Kiama Power, and she's volunteered at the Willoughby Wildcats in the Sydney AFL competition. For any mothers who gave their daughters advice 30 years ago that girls could do anything, Gabrielle Trainor is the perfect example that is actually true. Gabrielle, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Barnaby.
Before I start, I believe you have something you want to say?
I want to wish the walkers in the Bloody Long Walk in November, who are raising money for the Mito Foundation, all the best. It's going to be a big, big bloody long walk.
It's going to be bloody long. Cora Staunton, a member of the GWS Giants AFL women's team, said when she arrived from Ireland, where she was playing, that as soon as she stepped in the doors, it felt like family. Was, when you set up the Giants initially, was making it feel like family part of your goal?
I think absolutely. We wanted, and I was just one person of many who were there on the ground floor with the Giants, of course, but it was really important to us that we created a club where people were at the centre of it. We wanted not only to create an environment for good players and a successful team on the field, but we wanted more people who could contribute to the community and be the sort of people who would be able to be role models. And I think we've by and large succeeded with that. The atmosphere at the club is terrific, but it is all about the people.
There are a lot of parallels in the rise of women's sport to the rise of women in business in Australia. As the director at Temple Executive Search, do you feel like that came about through 2 or 3 huge policy changes, or has it just been the accumulation of a lot of small things over time, like good education and things like that?
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of factors. You're absolutely right, Barnaby. Certainly it's rather overcoming disempowerment rather than empowerment, as my husband reminded me the other day, that has seen women be able to participate really fully in business, in boardrooms, though there's, of course, a long way to go. But I think the tectonic plates have really shifted, particularly, as we've seen, for women in traditional male team sports over the past few years. I think it is all part of the same phenomenon, really, but women have stood on the shoulders of many, many women who've come before them. I mean, you go back to the 1900s when women played Australian rules. People regard it as an overnight success, but in fact it has been over 100 years that women have been playing our game, mainly in the early days for sort of charity purposes. But there are many, many women who've blazed the trails over decades in our game and in other traditional male sports.
So as the chair of Temple Executive Search, do you feel like society is in a place where women's rights in business is equal to men?
Look, I think the opportunities are there, but still, certainly in boardrooms, the numbers are improving, but where there's still work to do is in the C-suite. You're still not seeing as many women in senior executive roles as there should be. But I think, in a way, it's not only gender diversity that we should be concentrating on, though that's very important, but it's diversity in boardrooms and in leadership teams and in business everywhere. It goes beyond just gender. It's cognitive diversity. You want people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives coming together, because decision making in that way is proven to be better.
So as a woman with an AFLW Best and Fairest medal named after her...
Yes, that's an honour, isn't it?
It is an honour. Do you think rights for women in sport are equal to men?
Well, I think the opportunities are certainly emerging. You look at the AFLW competition, for instance, and it's going to be a while before the competition is a longer season and the economic base can develop. So it looks, more similar to the men's season. That's just going to take time, but certainly the opportunities are there. And I think in other traditional male sports, absolutely the same thing. Look at the success of the cricketers. I mean, just wonderful athletes. I think women have played individual sports for a very, very long time with a great deal of success. But the real phenomenon in contemporary Australia particularly is the rise of women in traditional male team sports.
So as a woman that's broken through glass ceilings her whole life, what advice did your mother give you when you were a girl if you said, "I can't do it, Mum, I'm a girl"?
Well, Mum was always very encouraging about excelling at school and, really trying to take every opportunity that was offered to you. I went to a convent school, actually, and it was really the nuns who taught us, who were advocates for women being able to achieve anything. They were remarkably progressive and very, very strong and steadfast influences on all of us who went to school in my school all those years ago. They were incredibly influential on me, I think, and on us.
Given you were at the ground floor of women's sport becoming a huge thing in Australia, how does it make you feel when you think that people sitting home on a Sunday, flicking around channels on their television, will most likely come across women's professional sport and the fact that you helped build it?
Oh, look, there have been so many more people who've contributed, much more than I have, but it is a great thrill. I mean, it's a great thrill for me to see the Giants take the field, I must say, every week during the season, because I remember when it was just an idea that we form a team in the west of Sydney. And equally, seeing women play our game now, it is very exciting and people do love it. I mean, I go to a lot of AFLW games, and to look around the audiences, and I was at the grand final where 53,000 people came to the Adelaide Oval to see the game. It's a traditional footy crowd. It's mums and dads and kids. It's people who love our game. It's not necessarily a separate audience. So it is really, really exciting to see that support. And I think, you know, as you've said, corporate sponsors are viewing Aussie rules in a very different light now that women play it. There are sponsors that we've never seen before who are very interested in getting involved. And I think audiences too. You know, we have been growing the audience. The core audience who loves footy is there, but there's a broader hundreds of thousands of people who are really interested in our game. It's a source of tremendous satisfaction for us all. It really is. You know, albeit a long way to go still.
Did the vibe in the GWS Football Club and the AFL in general change when women's football came into being?
Oh, absolutely. I think the experience in all the clubs who have a women's team is that the culture of the club was really improved because of the influence of the women. You know, women tend to be really open and you know, have conversations that men traditionally haven't been able to have. And I think just the environment of openness and transparency and collegiality has, in the experience of all the clubs, really, really been quite remarkable.
Let me take you to some family questions. Does your niece Isabella want to be a professional footballer?
Well, I hope she does. She's actually concentrating on her athletics at the moment, and she's a really quick runner. So I think she'd be well suited to play on the wing for one of the AFLW teams, but we'll see.
There you go, Isabella. Better work a bit harder. And how are the Kima Power going this year?
I haven't actually been in touch with the Kima Power lately, but I think they're battling away pretty well. You know, the women's participation and girls' participation rates, as you've said, are going up immeasurably. And my old stamping ground for junior footy, the Willoughby Wildcats, I think they're fielding a total of something like 30 teams nowadays, including about half of them being women's teams and girls' teams. So, you know, it really is quite a phenomenon. It's great to see.
And have you still got your hands dirty down at the Willoughby Wildcats?
Haven't been down for a while, but we've got some beautiful new facilities down there at Gore Hill, the appropriately named Gore Hill, and I think they're doing very well. They had 7 players selected in the under-15s squad, and I think one of them made it through to be playing for New South Wales. And they're hovering, you know, in reasonable shape on the ladders for all the competition. So they're a great club, and you know, it was just a thrill to be part of that when our kids were Wildcats.
Well, Gabrielle, thank you so much for coming on Everyday Greatness today. Thank you for everything you've done in progressing women's sport, business, and empowerment. I find you a huge inspiration, so thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Barnaby. Great to be here.
Thank you. Since season 1 of the AFL women's competition, the Greater Western Sydney Giants have been held up as an example of how to run an inclusive football club. But the Giants are a lot more than just a football club. They're like one of those weird human towers you see in Spain. These castels are built on solid foundations. If you tried building one with 3 people on the bottom, it'd come tumbling down spectacularly. But fill the base up with as many people as you can, and it'll stand strong for years to come. The GWS Giants, along with Collingwood, have been referred to as super clubs. And the CEO of the GWS Giants, David Matthews, joins me now on Everyday Greatness. David, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, Barnaby.
You used to be in charge of Victorian amateur club, the Geelong West Roosters. The Giants look a lot like an amateur Victorian club. Was there any factors of the Roosters that you brought over to run the Giants?
Oh, look, I think we are a unique club. I thought there was a terrific introduction too. I don't think I've ever had Spanish architecture referenced in a sporting interview, so that's a first. Well done. It was actually the Geelong Football League, and the Roosters were part of that league. It was an 11-team competition. It was my first job in football, and what was a key feature of that league and also the clubs within it was the very community orientation that they all had. Almost all of them were football and netball clubs, and they were really great hubs for the local community to gather together. And I think what it did was it really made you realise that in the end, a club's only as strong as the people that it's built on, as you said in your introduction, and that's been the strong focus of the Giants, just building a community, building advocates one by one.
So when the GWS Giants recruit players, do they recruit them based on the potential recruits being community-minded people, or is it just about being a footballer?
Oh, look, I think it has to be a bit of both. First and foremost, in both the AFL men's competition and the AFL women's, it's a ruthless competition. They're both ruthless competitions, and that increasingly the women's competition is becoming a greater standard as it builds its professionalism, and obviously the men's competition's been around for a long time. So you're dealing with elite athletes, but in saying that, our recruiting team and on both sides of the women's and the men's would be taking character into account. And before we draft or recruit any player, there's a lot of work done on the character of the person, the makeup, the suitability for our culture. They're going to add to our culture. Will they fit into it? So there's a lot of work done about the off-field as well as the on-field.
So Giants players and staff seem to be out in the community doing community things every time you look around. What's the initiative driving that from the Giants club perspective?
Well, we're a game that's over 150 years old, Australian football, and we're only 8 or 9 years old really in Western Sydney. Maybe a few years beyond that when the AFL started to invest in grassroots development. But it's I guess a region in particular that is known for soccer and rugby league, and we've got to put ourselves on the map, and it's just a huge opportunity for the game to be able to grow the awareness of the game and then the support behind the Giants. And you can really only do that by making sure that the community see that you're visible, see that you're making a contribution to the community you're operating in. And I have to say our players and our coaches are just brilliant ambassadors for both the AFL and the Giants in that regard.
So Giants Care seems to be an initiative that is run from the Giants through the communities. What are some of the programs that you do through that?
It's really tailored according to the needs of a particular community or council, or in consultation with schools that we deal with. What are their particular needs? They really focus around the pillars of health, harmony, employment, education. So it's about trying to tailor programs and community programs that leave some sort of legacy for the schools or the community groups we're working with. And we've got some terrific corporate partners who feel a really strong obligation to Western Sydney in particular, who are getting behind that. And frankly, at the moment, the biggest issue with those programs is actually catering for the demand. I think we do them very, very well, and we'd like to expand the reach. And right now, 8 or 9 years in, it's one of the reasons behind the fact that we're at 30,000 members. So it's certainly the community impact we have has helped us grow our fan base.
So you were part of getting the Giants women's team into the AFLW. Do you ever lie awake at night and think, I'm pretty bloody good, I helped shape history?
I can guarantee I do lie awake at night, but it's more worrying about different things than being satisfied with where we're up to. Look, I think there's a number of people at the club who are great advocates and enthusiasts for making sure that we were part of AFLW. It was brilliant work from Gillen at the AFL to bring that vision to fruition and bring the competition forward. And to have a Giants team in the AFLW competition has really significantly changed the club. It's a terrific pathway now that's being developed through AFL New South Wales, ACT, all the way up to the Giants women's team. We couldn't be more delighted to be representing the people of Canberra and Western Sydney in that competition.
So how has the feel and the fabric of the Giants Football Club changed since the women's team came into being?
Yeah, I don't think it would have. I think it would have changed clubs that are 150-year-old men's programs more than it would have changed ours. I think, by the very nature of what we wanted to do when we started, we've always been a very inclusive club. We've always been endeavouring to make sure that the doors are wide open for anybody to get involved. But what it's really done is, I think it's added to the culture, not necessarily changed it significantly, but added to it. It's just the vibrancy around the club that exists now because we have elite players in both men's and women's, and also a great partnership with Giants Netball. Just means that we really are what our purpose sets out to be, which is a club like no other.
So you guys had 30,000 members at the Giants, or you have 30,000 members. How many did you have before the women's team came in?
Well, when the women's team came in, we were probably just a tad over 21,000. The specific membership that attaches to the women's competition is probably 2,000 to 3,000. But that's a remarkable figure when you consider that right now, in building the competition, it's free entry. In the AFL competition, generally membership is a discounted entry ticket. It's basically buying seats at games in a discounted fashion. But in the women's program, the membership is a very significant number because these are people who are just making a financial commitment or wanting to be supportive of what we're trying to achieve. So it's a really pleasing number.
So the Giants, along with Collingwood, have been referred to as super clubs. You have a men's and a women's AFL team and a netball team under your banner. How important has the amalgamation of all those three teams been to the Giants' growth?
Yeah, it's been very important. I mean, to have those three platforms, and then underneath it, there's academies that provide opportunities beyond, junior levels of competition that provide the pathway through. So, I think the vision that Kevin Sheedy and Dale Holmes and myself and Tony Shepherd and others had when the club started was, I think this is going to be a very, very big club. This is, and all the indications so far support that. We're 30,000 members, as we've mentioned. We're 7th in the AFL competition for commercial revenue, which just shows you the appetite that corporate Australia has and indeed global brands have for connecting with Western Sydney and Canberra. So really, I think what it's given us a multiplier. I think we would have had this natural trajectory just with the men's team, but it's been a real catalyst to have the Giants Netball partnership and the AFL women's team. It's accelerated growth in every area of the business.
Well, David Matthews, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time to be on Everyday Greatness today, and all the best for the rest of the 2019 season.
Pleasure, Barnaby. Thank you. Appreciate your support.
Thanks to David Matthews and Gabrielle Trainor for joining me on Everyday Greatness today. Thanks to the ARA Group for sponsoring this show. Thanks to Look Studio for filming the show. And thank you for watching this show. I hope you can join us next month, where I'm going to be talking about strong dads in uncertain times. I'll be speaking to stand-up comedian Andrew Barnett, who also has a son with leukemia, and web designer Paul Lavings, who also has a daughter with diabetes. I hope you can join us next month, but if not, please jump onto our website, www.everydaygreatness.com.au, if you'd like to learn more about the show, or send me an email at barnaby.howarth@everydaygreatness.com.au and let me know what you think of the show. Thank you again for joining us, and if you can't join us next month, I hope you can lift your head up, push your shoulders back, and walk down the street proud of being an everyday Joe bag of donuts.